أعوذ بالله الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So in our lesson today, we shall be talking about this is our second lesson. Yesterday we gave an introduction to our course. We defined what international law is, the scope of international law, and the types of international law. Then we also talked about the actors of international law. That is, the international law is subjected to whom, you know? So that is what we did actually yesterday. So in our lesson today, we shall be talking about what? States, jurisdiction, and international relations. So this shall be our lesson objectives, So by the end of the lesson, learners should be able to, number one, explain the principles governing relations between states, describe state sovereignty and equality of states, define state jurisdiction and its types, explain recognition of states and governments, then identify state responsibility for internationally wrongful acts, then describe diplomatic and consular relations, then also explain immunities from jurisdiction, ثم أخيرا define international organizations and their legal personality. So in brief, this is what we shall be covering in our lesson today. Okay, so number one, the first part of our lesson, we are going to start with the principles governing relationship between states. Remember yesterday, we defined what a state is. We said that a state is independent in itself, a state has population, state has borders with other countries, and also a state has a population. Now, so what are the principles governing relationship between states? Mahi al-Mabadi. So what are these principles that governs al-alaqat bayna ad-duwal? So based on United Nations General Assembly Resolution 2625, these 7 principles promote friendly and peaceful international relations and support the purposes of the United Nations. So for example, for Somalia and Ethiopia, how should they relate to each other? What are the principles guiding them? So number one, refrain from threat or use of force. What is the meaning of this? States should avoid threatening or using force against the territorial integrity or political independence of other states. They should act in accordance with the purposes of the United Nations. So number one, if you are having 2 countries, they should refrain from threatening each other or using force. It should not be happen. It should not happen, and it should not be happening. It's very wrong under the international law. But what is happening, for example, now, you see what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. What can you say about that? That is known as an aggression. That is, Russia is using force. They are basically not respecting the sovereignty of the Ukraine. And there are many other cases in this world. So countries should refrain from threatening or use of force. The same thing with Israel and Palestine. What did Israel do? They forcefully attacked the Palestine. Number 2, pacific settlement of disputes. Disputes between states should be resolved peacefully through negotiation, arbitration, or other peaceful means. So, إذا كان هناك المشكلة, or if there is any dispute between country A and country B, then it should be resolved peacefully. That is, there is the International Court of Justice, there is the United Nations, and we also have the regional platforms that can be used. For example, if it is in East Africa, we have the East African Community. If it is in Africa General, you have the African Union that can help in mediating between the two countries, But countries should not resort to using force. No. Number three, non-intervention. States must not interfere in the domestic affairs of other states, respecting their sovereignty as outlined in the UN Charter. So, for example, country A should not interfere in the domestic affairs of country B. Mamno, it's not allowed under the UN Charter. Cooperation. States should cooperate with each other in accordance with the principle of the UN Charter to promote peace and development. Cooperation is of the essence. التعاون, their cooperation can mean هناك الاتفاقيات بين الدول, because you cannot live alone. You cannot survive alone as a country. You need the other countries. So there needs to be some ta'awun, there needs to be some cooperation. You want, for example, Somalia wants to trade with Ethiopia, or Somalia wants to trade with Kenya. There needs to be some cooperation. We need to cooperate. This cooperation can help to promote peace. At the same time, it can help to promote development. Number three, or number five, is it? Equal rights and self-determination. All peoples have the right to self-determination and should be treated equally in international relationships. So all people have the right to self-determination. And in the international law, we have to treat each and every person equally. So if you're an American, you need to be treated like a French. If you're a French, you need to be treated like an Ethiopian. And so all the people are the same. They share equal rights and self-determination. Then, sovereign equality of states. All states, regardless of size or power, are equal in sovereignty and legal rights. So all states, they are the same, regardless of their size, regardless of their power, regardless of their economic power, regardless of their GDP, regardless of their income, they're all the same. So this is just written. But does it really apply when it comes to the international law? Does it apply? When you see another country like America talking and insulting, for example, Somali, are they equal? No, they're not. They're not equal. So this, sometimes there are some things that are just written, but waqi'iyan, if you go to see what is happening, it's not happening. Many countries are disrespecting. Most of the countries in third world countries, they are not being recognized, especially even in the United Nations. They don't have, there's some countries, they don't have any say. They don't have representative. They don't have a veto. Then lastly, fulfilling international obligation in good faith. States are expected to honor their commitment and obligation under international law and the UN Charter. So there are some commitments. Each and every country, they have commitments, they have obligations. And these obligations are clearly stated in the treaties that countries sign between themselves or amongst themselves. So they need to respect those obligations. They need to commit to. They need to do their level best. So they are obliged to do it. So these are the words. So these are the 6 principles governing relationship between countries. Okay, number 2, responsibility of states for wrongful acts. For example, today, if a country does something that is wrong, what should happen? Or how can you determine if a country has done something that is wrong? Kev. So a country is legally responsible if it does something wrong under international law. So you as a country, you are responsible under 2 circumstances. So a state is responsible when 2 things happen. Number 1, the act is done by the state. So the action is carried out by the government, military, police, or official of the country. Even if officials misuse power, the state is still responsible. You know? So, for example, if the government of Somalia today decides to go and attack, the government or the military in Somalia decides to go and attack, for example, Ethiopia or another country. So we can take Somali to the International Court of Justice. We can take Somali to the UN because Somali as a government or their military or their police or their official, even if the official of Somali misbehave, even if they misuse their power, we are going to take Somali as a country, as a government, as a state to the International Court of Justice. Number two, the act breaks an international law. So, for example, if Somali breaks, the country violates a treaty, custom, or legal obligation, we can take them to the International Court of Justice or the UN. So, if the Somali government, Mathalan, was having a treaty with Kenya and it violates that treaty, so Kenya, we can just take Somali to the International Court of Justice or the United Nations. So, for example, Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in 1990. So Iraq used military force against another country, and this violated the international law. So Iraq was held responsible. There was some sanction, ila ghairi dhalik, because they attacked another country. And remember, we said the use of force is not allowed. Number two, cross-border pollution. So, for example, if you have a factory in Somalia and it causes pollution, damage in another country, the home state will be responsible. So you have a country, you have a factory in Somalia, the factory is very big, and the factory discharges, the factory pollutes maybe the ocean or the sea of another country. That country can take Somalia to a court of law. Why? Because of negligence, because of irresponsibility. They can go and they can seek for compensation. Now, number three, jurisdiction of states. Who can make laws and punish? Can anybody make law? Can anybody punish? So what's the answer to this? What is the meaning of jurisdiction? Jurisdiction means a country's legal power to make law and punish wrongdoing. So, if a country has the legal power, it basically means, so jurisdiction means a country can make law and can punish. If you cannot punish, if you cannot make laws, and if you cannot punish wrongdoers, that you don't have a government, you don't have a country. It is just fawda, it is chaos in your country. So, we have different types of jurisdiction. This is very important. We have different types of jurisdiction. We have 4 types of jurisdiction. Number 1, territorial jurisdiction. So, a country can punish crimes committed inside its border. Mathalan, if a crime happens in Somali law applies, full stop. So if somebody does something in your country, we are going to use the law in that country. So this is what is meant by territorial jurisdiction. It is all about al-makan, you know, the geographic, it's all about the geographical location. Now, number 2, personal / nationality jurisdiction. So a country can punish its citizens even if the crime happens abroad. For example, a citizen commits fraud overseas. Their home country may prosecute them. So, for example, you have a Somali citizen who, for example, does a crime in Uganda. Because he is your national, you know, you can still subject him to your law, you know. For example, we have a Somali who is doing some bad things in another country, doing money laundering, mathalan, counterfeiting the Somali currency. So you can do what? You can punish him because he's having your nationality. Now, number three, protective jurisdiction. A country can act if its security or safety is threatened, even if the act happened abroad. So sometimes there are some things that are happening outside Somalia. For example, counterfeiting a country's currency abroad. There are some people in Uganda, they are making some fake currency of Somali. So this is known as counterfeiting. So you as Somali government, you can take these people to an international court of law, because this act actually is threatening, the economy of Somali. So you cannot allow it. If you are going to allow it, what is going to happen? You are going to have it is what is known as tazwir. You are going to have a lot of fake money and forged currency in your country. So you have to put the security, your economic security first. Then lastly, universal jurisdiction. So some crimes are so serious that any country can punish them, no matter where they occur. So there are some crimes that anybody can punish. You can be punished. It does not matter where you do it. It does not matter the territorial jurisdiction, the personal, it doesn't matter. For example, genocide, like what is happening in Sudan. The Hemeti and the rapid support forces, they can be punished anyway. If they go to some country, they can be arrested. War crimes, piracy, torture, So an example, a war criminal can be arrested in a foreign country, even if the crime happened elsewhere. So a war criminal can be arrested in any foreign country, so long as there is evidence that he supported or participated in a genocide or war crime. So these are the jurisdiction of states. So this is a summary. This is a summary of the jurisdiction. So we have the territorial. The crime happened here in Somalia. So the country where an act occurs gets to make the rule. It happened in Somalia. We are the ones who are going to decide. Number two, personal or nationality. Our citizen did it, even abroad. He's our citizen, but madam, he's the one who did it in another country, we can still subject him to our law. Protective, the act threaten our national security. It can be a terrorist act, it can be spying, then universal. So these are the jurisdiction of states, the four jurisdictions. Now, there are some issues sometimes that are also related to jurisdiction of states. So there is what is known as modern jurisdiction and treaties. So we have the anti-terrorism treaties require countries to arrest suspects found in their territory and either prosecute them or extradite them to another country. This prevents criminals from escaping justice by crossing borders. So we have countries, for example, many countries, they have signed the anti-terrorism treaties. So these anti-terrorism treaties require you, if you have signed the treaty, to arrest suspects found in your territory. For example, you might be having somebody from maybe, I don't know, Afghanistan, and he comes to Somalia, and he did some things related to terrorism. So you as Somali, you should arrest that Afghan national because you signed that treaty. So you have to arrest, and you can do what? So you can either prosecute them in Somalia or extradite them. Extradite means you can send them to Afghanistan. So he is an Afghan. You can decide, wow, no, we are going to deal with him here in Somalia. Or you can decide you are going to arrest him and extradite, give him back to Afghan. Now, number two, there is what is known as concurrent jurisdiction. So sometimes more than one country has legal authority over the same crime. Sometimes you have a mushakal of the jurisdiction. So usually the country most closely connected to the crime prosecutes. However, no country may enforce its law inside another country's territory. So sometimes you find that there is a crime that happens between two countries, country A and country B. So the law, so what we normally do is that the country that is close, that is, we shall use the laws of that country that is close to the to the connected crime. Then we have territorial limitations. Police officers cannot enter another country to arrest someone without permission. It cannot happen. So, for example, Somali police, they cannot go to Kenya to arrest somebody in Kenya without the permission of Kenyan government. If that happens, that will be a very big case. Kenya can take Somali to the international court or to the UN, you know? So you need to ask permission. So your military, your police, they cannot actually operate. They cannot. And this thing happened sometimes back. This year, there are some soldiers from Uganda. They came to Kenya and they arrested somebody in Kenya and they went back to Uganda without the permission of the Kenyan government. So it brought some diplomatic issues. Now, we normally have two things, extradition and rendition. What is the difference? In an exam, you can be asked what is the difference between these two. So extradition is a legal process where one country hands over a suspect to another country, usually based on treaties. So extradition, it's legal, it's formal, where, for example, between Kenya and maybe Somali, so we hand over, Somali hands over somebody, a suspect, to Kenya in an official way, in a legal way. Then we have rendition. Rendition is the opposite of extradition, sending a suspect to another country without formal extradition procedures. It's more controversial. So here sometimes the CIA, it normally happens with the CIA. They will come to a country, arrest you, take you to another country. They're going to interrogate you. They're going to torture you so that you speak up. So rendition is very controversial. So, but extradition is very formal. Now, another issue is about the immunities from jurisdiction, legal protection. So number one, what is immunity? Immunity is a legal protection from being arrested or sued in another country. So for example, I am a Kenyan. If I go to Ethiopia, am I protected? Can I not be arrested and sued? So number one, we normally have the state immunity. One country cannot be sued in another country's courts without permission. So a foreign government cannot be easily taken to court in another country. So for example, you cannot take the Kenyan government to a court in Somali. It cannot happen. It can only happen in the international court. The international, but a court, but you cannot take Kenyan government to a Somali court. It can't happen. Number two, we have diplomatic immunity. Diplomats are protected, so they can work freely. For example, an ambassador cannot be arrested for minor offenses in the host country. You cannot arrest an ambassador of any country. They are immune. And if you arrest them, it can cause some diplomatic issues. Then head of state immunity. So current presidents or kings are protected for official actions. So a sitting president is generally immune from foreign courts. So for example, Somali president traveled to another country, they cannot take him to a court. He is immune. But another important thing is immunity does not protect people accused of genocide, war crimes. So of course there are some limitations. For example, like Netanyahu now, he's a head of state. But if he visited some countries, he's going to be arrested directly. Countries that are signatories to the International Court of Justice, because that was a ruling that was made by the International Court of Justice. So he can visit some countries that are not part of the treaty of the International Court of Justice, or the International Criminal Court. But he's not 100% immune if he visited some countries. So these are the types of immunity and a summary. So we have the state immunity, the diplomatic immunity, and the head of state immunity. Now, another issue is sovereignty of states over territory. What is the meaning of sovereignty? So sovereignty means a state has the exclusive right to rule and control its own territory. That is the land, the airspace, and nearby sea areas, and the people living there. If you cannot control some people, some regions in your country, then there is no sovereignty there. Sovereignty requires exclusive right. Everybody in Somali is being controlled by the Somali government. That is sovereignty. But if you have some regions, they are saying, no, we have our government. We don't recognize this state, the federal government. We don't have sovereignty. So no other country has the legal right to govern within that territory. So if you have your territory, no any other country can govern your territory. So because of this, sovereignty is closely linked to political independence. So countries that have sovereignty, they have political independence. So in traditional international law, state claims sovereignty over territory in several ways. So there are several ways you can claim. There are several ways you can claim what? There are several ways you can claim sovereignty. Number one, discovery. For example, you can find new land. Number two, occupation. Taking effective control of land through occupation. Then prescription, long and contested control over territory. You live in an area for many years and people don't contest. Oh, this area is our area. We need our area. Nobody's contesting. So that area automatically becomes your territory out of prescription because nobody's contesting about that area. So during colonial times, Western states used discovery and occupation. The Americans, the British, the Germany, the Italians, they were using discovery and occupation, using force. Sometimes, or they come and they occupy an area to claim new territories. Then sovereignty could also change hands. Sometimes your sovereignty can change hands through conquest, taking territory by force, like what Russia is doing now. So Russia is claiming some part in Ukraine. So it is claiming by force that territory, Then sometimes it can be by cession. Cession means transferring territory by agreement or treaty. So these are the two ways that sovereignty can change hands. So sometimes it is by core, by force, you take the territory, or sometimes you just sign a treaty. So in short, sovereignty gives a state full authority over its territory, and historically it could be acquired or transferred in different ways. Now, sovereignty and entry into a state's territory. So because a state has sovereignty over its country, foreign armed forces cannot enter the territory without the state's permission. So because you are having your sovereignty, no country, no foreign armed forces can enter into your country without permission. One key right of sovereignty is the right to exclude foreigners from entering the state's lands or water. This is often called the right to exclude aliens. Foreigners, they cannot enter your country unless they can only enter in a formal way. They enter through official channels. There is a visa. They'll be given a visa. You know. Now, diplomatic and consular relations. So diplomatic and consular relationship refer to the official legal relations between states through which countries represent their interests, protect their citizens abroad, and promote what? Cooperation in accordance with international law. Okay, that is especially in the Vienna Conventions. For example, a country's embassy negotiates political agreement with the host state. So the diplomatic role is for the embassy, the ambassador. While each consulate, we have the consulate also. So some countries they don't have embassies. They have consulate. So while each consulate assists citizens with passports and legal help abroad. This is the consular role. You know? So you have the diplomatic role and you have the consular role. For example, if you go to country B, if you lose your passport, you can be given an emergency traveling document through your consulate in that country or through your embassy. Now, what is the importance of diplomatic and consular relationship? So it promotes peaceful relationship between states. If there is anything, the ambassador of the countries, they can talk together, they can resolve any dispute in a diplomatic way. Protects citizens abroad. If you are a Somali in Ethiopia, there is an ambassador there. So if your embassy there, if you have any problem, they can help you. If you lose your passport, facilitate trade and cooperation. So the embassies, they normally promote trade agreements and investment, enhances international communication. So diplomats convey official messages between governments during crisis. If there is anything official, it can be communicated through the embassies, strengthen international cooperation. So diplomatic mission coordinate on global issues like health, security, إلى غير ذلك. Now, what are the principles of diplomatic and consular relationship? Number one, inviolability of diplomatic premises. Host state police cannot enter an embassy without permission. For example, in Kenya, we have the embassy of Somalia. The Kenyan government, they cannot enter that embassy without the permission of the Somali government. So the embassy of Somali in Kenya, the rules of Somali applies in that embassy. And if Kenya decides to attack the embassy, it is like if it is attacking Somalia. Diplomatic immunity. A diplomat is exempt from local court jurisdiction in the host country. So a Somali diplomat, the ambassador of Somali cannot be taken to court in Kenya. Non-interference in internal affairs. Diplomats must not take part in local political activities. If you are representing your country as an ambassador, you should not involve yourself in the politics of the country. Mutual respect and reciprocity. States grant similar diplomatic privileges to each other. So it should be mutual respect between country A and country B. Peaceful conduct of relations. Disputes are handled through dialogue. There should be no force. Then lastly, we have the international organizations and their legal personality. So number one, you just have to know what is international organization. So these are international organizations are institutions created by states through international agreements to achieve common goals. Their legal personality means they have the capacity to hold rights and duties under international law, such as making agreements, owning property, and bringing legal claims. For example, the United Nations can sign treaties with countries, own property, like the UN headquarters, and bring cases before international courts because it has international legal personality. Now, what are the challenges facing international organizations? There are very many. Conflict between international decisions and domestic law. Sometimes هناك التضارب بين the domestic and the international decision. Funding dependence on member states, like the UN. Most of they depend on funds from members. Lack of enforcement mechanism. Most of these international organizations, they don't have police, military. Limited authority over states. They don't have, like the UN, they don't have authority. Against what? Israel, they do everything. The UN cannot do anything. Non-compliance by member states. Members can just say, we are not going to follow that, your decision. Khalas. Political influence of powerful states, America, Russia, UK, they are the ones who are managing the UK. Their vetos decide everything. Withdrawal or threat of withdrawal. Some members, they can say, you are going to leave. So those are some of the challenges. So ala kulli hal, that's the end of our lesson. So we only have 1 minute remaining. We have 1 minute before the Zoom. So I'm going to send the attendance. I'm going to send the link in your groups. Please ensure that you take the attendance. Okay. It's very important because the attendance is 20 marks.
Ustad, I have a question, please.
We have 1 minute remaining. You can ask.
This is a more complicated course, which you covered the more important topics.
Okay.
Because if you can provide some read material like book or websites that we can furtherly study deeply in this course, yeah, especially every class.
Especially